Okay, we are back with Tempest Bradford and Jennifer Pelland after reloading my batteries, but luckily, while I was busy putting in new batteries, Katy Shuttleworth, right? Katy Shuttleworth, who did the covers of these two books, Chicks Unravel Time, Woman's Journey Through Every Season of Doctor Who, and Chicks Dig Time Lords, a celebration of Doctor Who by the women who love it, has walked in. Now, Katy, gotta tell me, how did you get hooked on Doctor Who, or are you just a cover person?
No, I work at an animation studio, and a friend of mine handed me the first season on DVD, saying, "Well, you like British things and you like sci-fi."
By first season, you mean the Christopher Eccleston?
Yeah, Christopher
Eccleston. Yeah.
And I started watching. It was like, it took me a few episodes to get into it, because it was like, I did not know the concept of Doctor Who at all. Like, the only thing I knew about it was that there was a dude in the 70s with a very long scarf. That was it.
Now, I wanted to ask the two of you, because obviously you and I are old Doctor Who people who have followed this, and, the regeneration, the whole 10 yards. At what point did you start to watch any of the old ones, or have you watched any of the old ones?
I made it a point to watch an episode of every Doctor. And I'm still working on trying to watch at least one episode every companion. So I have gone back. Like, I think.
Very difficult. Some you'll have to do audios.
Yeah. No, I have listened to a couple of audios. And then I went back probably when I started watching the second series of the new series had just wrapped. So there was a big gap between season 2 and season 3. So I went back and watched a few of the classic episodes as well.
And what did you think?
Oh, I loved it. Like, which ones did I watch? It was mostly Tom Baker ones.
Well, you gotta love Tom Baker ones.
I was sick of him by the end. I know I am so in the minority on this, but I thought he was phoning it in, and I wanted him gone. Oh. But I have stronger feelings about wanting David Tennant gone, so I never did. I'm so sick of him. Your catch word should not be, "I'm sorry." No, that's not the Doctor.
Yeah, that's a
whiniest for Generation Line ever. Also, that pissed me off.
Yeah.
That was really whiny. Die.
Yeah,
that was really bad. I was just like, if you don't, and that it was one of those moments where I was like, Russell T Davies and David Tennant are both like whining at us from out from inside the Doctor's mouth. I'm like, shut up! Nobody told you had to leave. Especially after Eccleston had that beautiful line. You know what? Yes. You were fantastic. And you know what? So was I. Come on. Yeah.
Now, actually, I thought that David Tennant, although brilliant and full of energy, especially I loved the Time Crash with Peter Davison, which I thought was one of the most brilliant things I had seen in a while. It was almost as if the 9th Doctor was recovering from the Time War. The 10th Doctor, because of that, was so melancholy. I mean, he was either psycho or melancholy.
And everybody fell in love with him. Boring. Yep. So
and
I love Donna so much because she didn't.
Yeah, so never, ever. I had to love that. But I didn't get that question to you. Older Doctor Who's, when did you start watching them, and what did you think?
I started watching them only a few years ago, and partially it was because you could find some of them on Netflix or streaming on Netflix. And then actually for Chicks Unravel Time, one of the things, there's basically an essay for every season of Doctor Who in this book. So when I was first approached about contributing to it, they asked if I wanted to do one of the classic seasons or if I wanted to do a new season, and the editors Deborah and Liz basically said that they wanted some people who would only watch new Doctor Who to watch some of the older episodes and think about them and talk about their thoughts. So I ended up watching season 13, which is a Tom Baker, and the only companion he has for most of it is Sarah Jane Smith. And I really did, I found a lot of enjoyment to be had in season 13, but as my essay states, there was a lot of stuff that made me just make a frowny face, like the lack of ladies. There were no ladies sometimes except for Sarah Jane in that entire season, which was just odd. But I've also watched some of the seasons, around that when I watched the season before the season 12 with Harry Sullivan, and I really like the Genesis of the Daleks. I think that's probably my favorite classic Who episode that I've seen.
And the season I had the opposite problem. I was in season 22, which was the first full Colin Baker season. And Perry's the companion, and there's lots of great female characters, but none of them are her. And every female character is like a slap in the face to Perry, because they're all written, even if they're the bad guys, they're written awesomely, they're full, they're rich, they're what they're doing with commitment and conviction, and she's just winding her way through time and space.
Oh no!
Unhappily, and her character development is how much worse her costuming gets in every episode. At one point, they actually put her in a coat, and I was relieved. I mean, so
now
it's the opposite of what you had, where like you had Sarah Jane as the only female, whereas they seemed to get the memo by season 22, but not for the companion. The companion was awful.
Now, it's funny because when I think of women in Doctor Who, my first thought is always Leela, because she was an extremely strong woman. And in both the Big Finish audios, the Leela episodes, and you talk about Perry not being strong, I think that especially in the Big Finish audios, where you had Perry and Aramem, and I don't know if any of you have listened to any of those.
I haven't listened to those, but I've listened to a lot of Big Finish.
All right, the Big Finish episodes with the Fifth Doctor and Perry and Aramem, who was an Egyptian pharaoh, you basically played two women off of each other in their strengths, so I suspect that both of you would like them. Well, tell me about what you've written for this book. What is your contribution to that book?
Well, as I just mentioned, I did season 22, and it's called The Problem with Perry, where I just enumerate how they completely smacked poor Nicola Bryant in the face with all these great female co-stars.
You got a Big Finish. You got to start with Eye of the Scorpion. No, that's the one.
Spare time? Because I got none. I got none.
The next time you have a long drive, that's where it goes. Now, your contribution. Because you're in both books.
I'm in both books. So I wrote about season 13 for Chicks Unravel Time, and all the strangeness that was there. And then for Chicks Day Time Lords, this was basically, we were just supposed to talk about like our love of Doctor Who and maybe like what it was like being a woman in fandom. But I was specifically approached about this book because I was out on a panel about Martha Jones, and I love Martha Jones as a companion. And so my essay is called like Martha Jones Fangirl Blues, because it's basically about how much I love Martha and how badly the show like treated her and what made me like very upset about like some of the treatment of her in the show, and partially it was, you know, there was some stuff about like racial politics, but there's also just, you know, just really random bad choices. But none of the random bad choices made me love Martha even less. It just made me love her more. So.
Now, actually, that's an interesting thing. You mentioned racial politics. What did you think of them having Martha be married to Mickey at the end of David Tennant's last show? I thought it was an odd decision.
It was an odd decision. It made me want to throw Russell T Davies off a cliff.
But it was the first time he had a married black couple.
That's true.
Because he always has interracial couples or divorced black couples.
Yes.
So at least that was a tiny step, and maybe.
But see,
it's the only thing that made me happy about it.
But see, that actually was the thing that made me sad about it, because it was like, oh, there are two black people, let's pair them off. I was like, because it would have been different if we hadn't known, number one, that Martha already was engaged to some dude.
Yeah.
So like she was engaged to some dude, and then all of a sudden she was married to Mickey, and we're like, where the hell did any of that come from?
No,
that was just a tiny little bit of comfort I took from it. That was it. You know, the fangirl trying to explain something to make me happy. It's like, yes, it was completely random. It was irritating, but I was like, well, maybe he'll write another married black couple.
Okay, as the incurable romantic, I was always disappointed that the Donna's quote-unquote husband from the library never found her. I thought that would be an interesting story. Yeah. Plus, I liked the book signing, which I thought was very, very poignant, and I thought that from that episode, again a Martha episode, you had strong women. But we're nearly out of video. So where can we? Obviously, the two books are Chicks Unravel Time, Chicks Dig Time Lords. That you can obviously find it here, and Anne's Bookstop. Now the big thing is Annie's Bookstop. Where else can we find your writing?
Well, I also have a novel out and a short story collection. My novel's called Machine, short story collection's Unwelcome Bodies, and I have short stories out in various things, most recently Dark Faith Invocations. Most all of it's published by Apex. You can buy it from their website or here at Annie's or all of the online booksellers.
All right, Tempest, where can we find your stuff?
Well, I mostly am a short story writer, so I'm in a lot of different anthologies and magazines. I am also in Dark Faith Invocation, so like obviously Jennifer and I are just like going to be TOC buddies. But maybe of interest to some Doctor Who lovers, I'm in a book called Diverse Energies, which is a YA anthology of dystopian fiction, and my story is about time travel. So you should, if you're into Doctor Who, you should totally read that.
And Katie,
yeah,
where can we find you? Besides these, can we find you elsewhere as well?
Other covers?
Yes, I've done also, there's a Joss Whedon one called Whedonista that I did, and then there's a follow-up to that called Chicks Dig Comics. Somewhere in there.
Yeah, that's great. Chicks. Now, I owned a comic book store many years ago when I had something resembling here, and it was always a very rare thing when you found a woman who was into comics. And the problem is that you generally had 10 guys who were into comics who were following you around everywhere you went. And I've got to close with that question. Do you find the same thing happening as Doctor Who fans? Obviously, you have a family and so forth, but no, none of that.
I mostly hang out with female Doctor Who fans.
Yeah, my fandom experience also came through fanfic, which is extremely female-centric. So I'm actually surprised when I run into fandom circles that are heavily male.
Yeah. When I started going to Doctor Who cons, I was actually surprised how many guys were there.
Because seem to be mostly ladies.
Cripes. This is very. My experience is exactly the opposite. But ladies, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.